We're back here, SwamiLee's Sports Talk. I'm Swami Lee,
I am Mellow Mike.
and we have a category or a discussion or something going on today that Mike has not shared with me. So, Mike, what you got for me?
Well, what we have today is a slightly different format. We're going to do four very short discussions about four very different topics, some of which are timely, all of which will captivate the audience. And it is true, Swami, you do not know what any of them are.
Okay.
So, this show has been inspired by Twitter because the idiots on Twitter don't limit themselves to politics. They also talk sports, and they show their ignorance of sports.
And you have some of the dumbest people alive on Twitter. There's no question about that.
Yes. There are a whole host of people on Twitter who seem to think that one Bobby Abreu was clutch. And they're wrong, and we'll talk about that.
He was also a great fielder while we're at it.
Let me hear your thoughts about Bobby Abreu. Clutch or not?
Bobby Abreu, first of all, was fearful of the wall. Let's start with that, okay? And he won a Gold Glove, so his career is tarnished, in my opinion. Bobby Abreu, again, I don't remember exactly how clutch he was from the standpoint of the batting average. I can tell you that he was not a team player. That's really what I know about Bobby Abreu. He didn't want to bat leadoff because he didn't give him enough RBI opportunities, even though he was an on-base kind of guy, and it was best for the team. He was scared to death of the wall. He would never go anywhere near it. Again, maybe some people say it keeps him healthy, but that being said, personally, he was a good baseball player. He's not a Hall of Famer. Is he a clutch player? I would have to say probably not, but my memory is not strong enough to tell you that he did this or he did that more often.
Well, you'd be right that he wasn't clutch, but first I want to talk briefly about his heart. Not only did he not want to bat leadoff, but he didn't want to bat second or third because those were the highest pressure positions in the batting order. He'd rather have batted fifth.
Well, I just remember them wanting to bat him leadoff and him refusing to do so and making a big deal out of it. And when you're playing on a bad team, come on, man. Seriously? Woof, woof. That's all I have to say about Bobby Abreu.
Yep. Well, let me tell you, Swami, some people said he was clutch because his career OPS was significantly higher after the All-Star break than before the All-Star break, but that's nonsense because we all know that in Philadelphia, New York, where he spent most of his career, the ball carried better in the heat in July and August. And that's what accounts for the better slugging percentage.
Well, that's true, but you've left out one really important aspect of this. Sure, he may have had better statistics in August and September, for example, but who cares? The team was never in contention. The Phillies didn't compete until he was off the team. Think about that.
Actually, in 2005, they went into the last game of the season in position to make the playoffs, and they just needed help they didn't get. But leave that aside.
So hang on. So you're telling me. Hang on. So you're telling me that once in 8 years he was in a postseason potential situation, and that's going to make him clutch?
Well, in 2003 they were knocked out of the playoffs with about 3 games left to play. So that's twice. But listen, the people are wrong. The people who say he's clutch are wrong. And let me tell you one more thing about them. They say that because Baseball Reference says that he hit better in high leverage situations, he was clutch. But that's wrong, and I'll tell you why. Leaving aside what we saw with our own eyes, his batting average, his slugging percentage, and his OPS in later innings was significantly lower than his career average, and his strikeout percentage was a lot higher in those innings than his career strikeout percentage. And all that says, not clutch.
Well, that's how you judge clutch. You don't judge clutch in August and September. You judge clutch in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings.
Well, you don't have to convince me.
Well, idiots on Twitter, pay closer attention. Thank you.
Let's move on to the next topic.
Okay.
I was shocked at the amount of vitriol that I received on Twitter when I disputed the assertion that Yadier Molina is a legend of the game and an all-time great.
So wait, you said that or they
I
said that?
said I said he's not a legend and he's not an all-time great.
You
And
see,
you know,
hang on. We got a problem with this situation because he's never going to make it with his bat, and because any player that is not a hitter, not a pitcher, of course, but any player that's not a hitter, it's hard to consider him a legend. I mean, is Omar Vizquel a legend of the game?
it's interesting that you mention Omar, and I'll tell you why. Because Omar, like Yadier, is top 20 all time in defensive WAR, and if you look at defensive WAR as meaningful, then maybe you could argue that old Yadier is great because he's behind only Gary Carter and Bob Boone career-wise in defensive WAR.
Well, I mean, you look at Molina's numbers, and they're pedestrian. I mean, they're good. I'd take him on my team any day of the week. But his offensive numbers, he's a 280 hitter. He averages 13 home runs a year, 75 RBIs. Again, they're solid numbers, but they're not, oh, wow, Gary Carter or Mike Piazza, or whomever it might be. He only has 2,000 hits. I mean, again, over spanning parts of 17 seasons, that's not exactly a Hall of Fame, offensive situation.
Well,
But
you're right.
you sit back and you say, okay, but what about defense? And this is where I really have trouble because I'm not an expert on defense. I mean, I don't know how important, I shouldn't say how important. I don't understand range factor the same way some people do. I mean, he's gone down 40% of base stealers in his career. 40%. Think about that one for a minute. That's a pretty high number for anybody. Okay? But again, what tell me right now what's a good range factor? Exactly. That's my point. I don't know if his career range factor of 7.95 is good or bad. Okay? But I do know that I've seen him play. I've seen his numbers, and again, are you comparing him to Mike Piazza, Carlton Fisk, Gary Carter, Yogi Berra, etc.? I mean, how are you comparing him to call him a legend or a non-legend of the game?
Well, other than the defensive WAR factor, you'd be surprised by how many people liked a tweet which, paraphrased, basically said more than half of the Cardinals' success in the past 2 decades, which includes 2 World Series, 4 pennants, and a bunch more division titles, is attributable to Yadier.
Well, a catcher is an awfully important position, and you're looking at a guy who has a 995 career percentage at catcher defensively. Okay, he frames pitches. The pitchers do well when he's. I mean, his level of importance, the catcher of his caliber, is really high. It really is high. But it's just such a tough situation because we're so set on offense. Offense is everything. Mike Piazza, my God, the guy could barely catch, but he's one of the greatest of all time because of his offense. Would you want Molina's defense over Piazza's offense?
Well, tough question. And bottom line, maybe. I mean, the bottom line is when you talk about legends of the game, just talk about the Cardinals. You think Rogers Hornsby, Stan Musial, Bob Gibson. You don't think Yadier Molina. And
We could go on for hours on that. That's a whole separate discussion. Okay, when I think of legends of the game, I don't think Phil Rizzuto, but he's in the Hall of Fame. Okay,
and interestingly, I was going to note that not all Hall of Famers are legends of the game, including Rizzuto, Ryan Sandberg, and Derek Jeter.
Harold Baines. Well, come on. As much as everybody knows I detest Derek Jeter, he is a legend of the game. Okay, he's just not. He's just not the greatest Yankee of all time. He's not the greatest shortstop of all time. Remember, Derek Jeter wasn't the greatest shortstop on his own team for more than half his career. Just think about that one for a minute.
I remember.
He was not the best. Alex Rodriguez was 5 times the player of Derek Jeter, even without taking whatever the heck he ended up taking.
Well,
Okay.
Swami, let's get off the Derek Jeter tangent and move on to the next topic.
Okay.
We're going to take a very, very brief detour into the world of NFL football.
Okay.
You may recall that one Calvin Johnson was elected to the NFL Hall of Fame recently.
That's correct.
And there are some idiots on Twitter, including one Karen Eagle, who was one of his teammates, who said that he is the GOAT at wide receiver. Yay or nay?
Calvin Johnson was stuck in Detroit. I feel bad for Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson played for Dallas. They would have named a town after him. Calvin Johnson was really, really, really good. Okay. Now, is he the greatest of all time? I can't put anybody over Jerry Rice, Randy Moss. From what I've seen in the past 40 years, I can't put anybody over those two. Okay, and they got some really good receivers out there, but they're not as idiotic as the people that think that Bobby Abreu was a clutch player. They're bigger idiots than people that think Calvin Johnson was the greatest of all time. Because again, he wasn't, but he was definitely in the conversation. Abreu was in no conversation involving a clutch player by any means. So that's the big difference you're talking about. Just like, Molina. Molina was no Yogi Berra. Molina, was no offensive Gary Carter. He's no offensive Ted Simmons, etc. But was he, is Molina a Hall of Famer? I'm going to say yes, he is. And Calvin Johnson, Hall of Famer? No doubt in my mind. Greatest of all time.
You know what? Let's put off discussing Yadier until he's actually on the ballot in 6, 7, 8 years.
Okay.
We're going to move on to our last topic. Simple question. Other than significantly better pitching from the bullpen, which is obvious, what do the Phillies most need to do or to have happen to be a playoff team in 2021?
Mike, that's a conversation for another show. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of different pieces of this team being built from different ends. I think they've done all the moves that you can expect a team to make realistically to try to compete. Can I guarantee that? Absolutely not. But I will tell you that I am quite pleased with the performance of the Phillies front office this offseason. I am anxious for the Phillies 2021 season. I would be at the spring training games if it wasn't for our unfortunate situation that we're dealing with right now in this country. And I believe that this team has as equal chance as any team in Major League Baseball, not named the Dodgers, to play in the postseason, whether that be wild card, division, etc. I'm confident they've made the right moves. And if you have watched our recent shows, you'll know more about that.
Well, then we will defer that until another time.
That sounds like a winner. Well, we are running out of time, so thank you so much for tuning in for Mike's rant on what he's seen on Twitter over the last couple of weeks. And tune in, see what else we have to whine and cry about, including, mean people on Twitter. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. I'm Swami Lee.
I am Mellow Mike.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for watching.
Bye-bye.